Mark, thank you for joining us. This is our kind of second instalment of the Fit Show family, which is our just new content exercise where we're just trying to have some positive conversations with different people across the industry, find out how people are coping in the current climate, and just offer some practical advice and support for everybody else that's out there, so that we're all in tip-top shape when we are back to business and we can hit the ground running. So for those who don't know you, you're Mark Tinnion from Digital Kog. So for those who don't know you in Digital Kog, just want to give us a little bit of an overview of you and what the company does.
Sure. Yeah, Digital Kog are a digital marketing agency who specialize in the generation and maximization of online leads for businesses whose sales processes take place offline. So in good old-fashioned terms, we are lead generators who happen to look in technology. And use the online environment in order to generate those leads. Yeah. In terms of myself, I'm the company brand director. So I advise and support Digital Kog's client on brand strategy and advertising strategy, and also obviously contribute to overall marketing conversations.
Great, that's brilliant. And how have you and the team been impacted kind of day to day by what's happening at the moment? Have you had to kind of rapidly overhaul the way that you're working?
No, I don't think so. I think it's the impact's been largely operational, Jess. So obviously we're all working from home now. So if a cat wanders across my desk, I'll apologise. Apart from that, the day-to-day has not been impacted too much. We moved very quickly. Yeah. We got set up from home really quickly, and in the day-to-day, we're largely doing the same things as we were. So we're still working tirelessly to maximise lead opportunities for clients. That's what we were doing before the lockdown. It's what we've been doing during it. So other than we're all in different rooms, not too much has changed.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think everyone's kind of adapted to this remote working environment. I did a brainstorm on Zoom this week with 10 people, and that was something new, but it can all be done. It can still all be done remotely. So you and the agency have a vast amount of experience in the home improvement sector, and I know a large proportion of your client is made up of brands within the home improvement sector. So selling windows, doors, conservatories, kind of the full plethora of home improvement products. How have they specifically been impacted by the current pandemic?
Well, like lots of businesses, they're impacted in many ways. Probably the three major ways are obviously the many of our clients can't build or fit at present. So operationally, they're slightly hamstrung. So they can't service their customers or generate turnover in the same way that they could, obviously. So that's probably the biggest impact. Secondly, they've had to close showrooms, so they can't generate business through that lead source, and we know that lead source is a very strong lead source. Yeah. So that's closed that off, and they can't sell the same way because obviously traditionally sales in this market are performed in the customer's home. Exactly. And obviously they can't visit the customer's home, so they're having to adapt to a new way of operating from a sales function point of view. But there are certainly positive stories from that, and some who have really embraced it and are doing really well.
Great, and I know kind of doing some recent reading of the industry press that there's been a big uplift in kind of home improvement searches online and people who are spending a lot more time at home and therefore looking at ways that they can improve the home. So hopefully when those restrictions are all lifted, there'll be a good pool of leads there for people to kind of jump at.
Yeah, I think it was entirely predictable, Jen. I think people are at home, so they're observing the flaws and the opportunities in their living space, and that will create interest in products in the home improvement industry. There's no doubt about it. And we were talking about this, when we were first aware that a lockdown may occur here when it obviously started to look like it was on the cards in Italy. We thought actually this may create opportunity. This everybody being at home will not necessarily be a bad thing in terms of the buoyancy of the market. So
Yeah.
we were really clear that despite that it was going to present other challenges, one of the things it would help to do is potentially to drive interest in the market as a whole, and that has proved to be the case.
Yeah, brilliant. And hopefully, there'll be further kind of positive impact on that. If people can't afford to take a holiday or they're not able to travel, then they can redirect those funds into improving the home. Yeah. So often during times of kind of an economic downturn or uncertainty, I've seen this a lot having come from agency side myself, brands tend to, or some brands will look at either reducing marketing budgets or cutting it completely. Would you say that that's the right approach?
Well, every business is in a different position. So it would be wrong to suggest that businesses take a gung-ho approach to these kind of situations. So every business is in a different position, particularly with regards to finance.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from a purely strategic point of view, purely from a marketing strategy point of view, the absolute last thing you would do is stop marketing and stop communicating with customers. And there are sequential studies that go back over 100 years that have monitored and researched the subject of marketing during periods of reduced demand or during recessions. And every single study reaches the same conclusion, which is companies who keep marketing to their customers, who keep communicating with them, produce substantially better results during the period, and they gain market share and they come out of the period a lot stronger. Yeah. And I can't think of any single study which has produced evidence to the contrary. Yeah. One of my colleagues used to be a director at Nike for many years, and he would often recount to me the story of Nike in the 90s recession, who went into that period as a number 2 brand and a smaller company than Reebok, but they leveled Reebok because Reebok cut their spend substantially during that time, and Nike kept theirs going. And they came out of that period as the number 1 sportswear brand in the world, and they have been in that position ever since. Yeah. And that's, they're not the only example. Kellogg's, Toyota, even recently Amazon in the last financial crisis, all companies who came out of these periods very well because they kept communicating with their customers. So my advice would always be, and was from the start of this to all our clients, to try and keep communication, keep marketing, as you do so.
Yeah, and from a kind of a practical advice perspective, what would you say to brands, particularly within the home improvement sector? What's good practice? What can they be doing now while they can't get out and about and do face-to-face business?
Well, we've seen, as we were discussing earlier, an awful lot of people have moved online for their marketing purposes during this time, because obviously a lot of channels are shut down. And so that has opened up huge amounts of opportunities. People are interested in what you're selling. So I would advise, as we did with all of our clients, to maintain a very strong digital presence. Yeah. And there will be people who are looking to buy right now. There will be people who are looking to buy when we come out of this period. Yeah. And engaging with them digitally will give you a great opportunity to do that. So and one thing you also know is that the space will be less crowded, because there will be companies who will cut their spend, and therefore you will have a far greater share of voice now than you ever will have when times are a bit more normal.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, have you seen any great examples from brands out there that are just nailing the marketing during this period?
Well, I mean, this is a really interesting subject because I think the brands who are probably doing best are the brands who are not changing anything. I think that the kind of slew of kind of coronavirus themed advertising concerns me a lot because I think it's an awful waste of money, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that people are forgetting the purpose of marketing, which is to sell your product and to create interest in it. And you know, we're ending up with a whole lot of adverts which are wholly generic, very, very only meaningful. You know, there's no message behind them, and they don't really tell you anything. And the brands that are just kind of keeping going as they were with their strategy, the brands which I think are doing better out of it. And I think people, you know, people like normality. You forget that advertising is always selling people a dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
No matter what product it is, you're selling them a version of reality that doesn't necessarily exist, but it's hyperbole to create interest. And so I think people really appreciate that at times like this. You know, they like seeing people getting together. They like seeing the world as normal, because that's what they crave. So I don't think there's any benefit to wholly changing marketing strategy. I think it's very dangerous. I think you start to lose message and what makes you different. So I think the brands that have done quite well, brands who've kept to the same strategies, some of them have done some nice things, like Admiral giving people £25 back is a lovely thing to do, and that's a really good thing. You know, I think Iceland were the first people who said, well, you know, we're going to put people who are in vulnerable positions first in the queue, and that's a really good thing to do, and a really nice thing. But they're not fundamental changes in advertising strategy. They're just nice things to do that give you a bit of brand credibility. So outside of that, I think that my advice to clients would always be to maintain what you were doing before. That didn't suddenly stop us, and with people stop working as a result of people being sat at home.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I was going to ask you if there are any big no's, but you've almost answered that. So the no's are: don't switch the lights off completely, and you know, don't get the tone wrong. I think I'd like you to talk about these temporary, kind of worthless, meaningless campaigns. Keep the focus on the brands and products, and don't lose your integrity.
Absolutely, it doesn't make you insensitive to market your product. That doesn't make you insensitive at all. And you know, people welcome, as I say, they welcome the consistency and the normality of that. And I worry that there's an awful lot of money being wasted in hastily arranging adverts just for this period, which don't really mean a lot, and kind of all into one. And I think it's not being insensitive to the situation. Everyone knows it's a serious situation. But that doesn't mean that you can't market to people in a very normal way. You absolutely can.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I completely agree. And then in terms of your predictions for the home improvement industry, you know, we've read a lot about, or I've read a lot about in the last couple of weeks, these green shoots of recovery. And we just touched on the fact that people are spending more time at home, and therefore are browsing, researching and planning those home improvement projects. Have you got any other kind of predictions, you know, that you know, different trends that might emerge as a result of this extended period of lockdown, or do you think it'll kind of return to business as usual naturally?
I think it'll situations like this always, you know, they always do create opportunity once they're over, or once you get through the worst of it. And I'm really optimistic about the home improvement industry, certainly from what we've seen in terms of the level of interest in it. Statistically, you know, how our clients are finding they're inundated with inquiries. I think the major issue is going to be how they service them when they come out of it, a lot of our customers. So that tells me that there is going to be an awful lot of interest in in the market when we can start to return to a semblance of normality. And as you really accurately pointed out, people aren't going to be going on holiday this year, so that money is going to be likely in many cases deferred onto something else, another project. And so therefore I would imagine that the home improvement industry is one of the industries which will come out of this and be potentially stronger than when it went in, if as I say, if companies have managed to navigate it correctly. So I'm quite excited actually about the future of the industry for the rest of the year, and I think the people will be focusing more on their home than they ever have done as a result of just having to spend more time there.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're feeling very optimistic too, and it's always great to have these positive conversations with people that are experiencing the same things. So looking ahead now, we're looking ahead to obviously Fit Show 21, which is next May, and I think timing wise, we're quite hopeful that things will have settled down by then, thankfully, and we'll be in a much stronger position to kind of interact face to face with people, have bigger social gatherings. So we're seeing, Fit Show as kind of a key beacon within the fenestration calendar. From a marketing mix perspective, how important do you feel live events will be after this extended period of lockdown?
More important than they were before we went into it, for sure. I think that people will really, and they really miss the interaction with other people. They really miss the interaction, the kind of tangibility, as you say, of being able to interact with items, be that products, be that money. So I think that there will be probably an extended period where people's appreciation of things like events will be wholly more vivid than was before this situation. It's that old thing of, you don't know how much you appreciate something until it's taken away from you. So I would expect there to be certainly a renewed verve about the events industry as a whole once we come out of this situation, and people will realize how much perhaps they missed it, which is obviously it's challenging for the events industry at the moment, but again, should be one of those industries that when we come out of this, I hope benefits massively from the fact that people have felt that loss.
Yeah, definitely. So just to kind of wrap up, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. So to summarise, what would be your 3 top tips to brands? What should they absolutely be doing now so that they are in their best shape possible when when the pandemic's over, to ensure that they can hit the ground running?
I think I would probably sum it, if you allow me, Jess. I would just distill it down to one, which is change as little as possible. Yeah. What you were doing prior to the situation will have been working. It will work through this situation, and it will work after it. So I wouldn't be hasty to suddenly react. Clearly, one must be really cognizant of the guidance that we've been given by our government, and we have to take that seriously and adhere to whatever they're advising us to do. But outside of that, in terms of how you communicate and how you market to your customers, I would change as little as possible. I would keep doing what you're doing, and that is what will see you through.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Mark.
That's fine. Thank you.